Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here. Today, I want to share a story with you, a story about perspective, resilience, and the quiet power of growing up. It's not a fairy tale about dragons or magic, but rather a story about the invisible burdens we all carry. It's about a young man who thought the weight of the world was crushing him, only to realize that he wasn't being crushed by the weight, but by the way he was holding it. By the time we finish, I hope you'll ask yourself the same question he did. Are you the glass? Or are you the lake? So, grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's head into the city. Blank. Part 1. The Noise. Our story begins with a young man named Lucas. Lucas lived in a bustling city, the kind where the skyscrapers scrape the gray clouds and the sound of sirens never truly fades. Lucas was 26 years old, an age that is supposed to be the prime of life. But for him, it felt like a constant uphill battle. He worked as a junior architect at a prestigious firm, a job he had killed to get, but was now slowly killing him. Lucas was, by all accounts, brilliant, but Lucas had a fatal flaw. He was a chronic worrier. He treated his life like a minefield, tiptoeing around, waiting for the next explosion. To Lucas, an inconvenienced life was a tragic life. If the barista at the coffee shop put almond milk instead of oat milk in his latte, Lucas wouldn't just be annoyed, his morning would be ruined. He would mutter to himself on the subway, "Why can't people just do their jobs? Why does this always happen to me?" If his boss sent an email with a period instead of an exclamation mark, Lucas would spiral. "He hates my work. I'm going to get fired. I won't make rent." If it rained on a Saturday, which it often did in his city, Lucas would stare out the window of his overpriced shoebox apartment and sigh, "Great. Another weekend wasted. The universe is practically laughing at me." Lucas lived in a state of constant contraction. He was tight, defensive, and bitter. His friends, who used to love his sharp wit, started to drift away. No one wants to grab a beer with someone who treats a traffic jam like a personal insult. His girlfriend, Sarah, had recently asked for some space, telling him, "Lucas, you're drowning in a puddle. And you're pulling me down with you." That comment stung. Drowning in a puddle. She doesn't get it, Lucas told himself. She doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. But deep down, Lucas knew something was wrong. He felt heavy. His chest was always tight. His jaw always clenched. He was exhausted, not from the work he did, but from the emotional toll of resisting everything that happened to him. Part 2. The Escape. One particularly brutal Friday, after a project he led received harsh feedback from a client, Lucas reached his breaking point. He felt the walls of his apartment closing in. He needed to get out. He packed a bag, got into his beat-up sedan, and drove 3 hours north to the quiet, rugged coastline where his grandfather, Jack, lived in a small cabin. Grandpa Jack was a man cut from a different cloth. He was a retired carpenter, a Vietnam veteran, and a man of few words but immense presence. He had hands like sandpaper and eyes that seemed to hold the calmness of the ocean he lived beside. Lucas arrived late at night. Jack didn't ask questions. He just opened the door, pointed to the spare room, and said, "We'll talk in the morning." The next day, Lucas slept until noon. When he woke up, he found Jack on the back porch, whittling a piece of cedar wood. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and salt spray. Lucas sat down, heavy with his grievances. It didn't take long for the dam to break. He poured it all out: the demanding boss, the incompetent coworkers, the breakup with Sarah, the traffic, the cost of living, the rain, the unfairness of it all. "I just can't catch a break, Gramps," Lucas said, his voice cracking. "It feels like life is specifically designed to make me miserable. Every time I solve one problem, 3 more pop up. It's too much to carry." Jack listened without interrupting. He didn't offer pity. He didn't say, "It'll be okay." He just nodded, set down his knife, and stood up. "Come inside," Jack said. "I'm making lunch." Part 3. The Salt and the Glass. In the kitchen, Jack filled a clear glass with water from the tap. He set it on the wooden table in front of Lucas. Then, he opened the cupboard and pulled out a large container of sea salt. "Watch," Jack said. He took a large tablespoon, heaped it with salt, and dumped it into the glass of water. He stirred it vigorously until the salt dissolved, leaving the water cloudy. "Drink it," Jack ordered. Lucas looked at him skeptically. "What? No." "Drink it," Jack repeated, his voice firm. Reluctantly, Lucas lifted the glass and took a sip. Immediately, he gagged and spat the water into the sink. "God, that's disgusting," Lucas coughed, wiping his mouth. "It's incredibly bitter. Why did you make me do that?" Jack ignored the question. He grabbed the bag of salt and beckoned Lucas to follow him. "Grab your jacket. We're going for a walk." Part 4. The Lake. They walked down a winding trail through the woods until the trees opened up to reveal a massive, pristine lake. It was a stunning sight, acres of deep blue water reflecting the gray sky, rippling gently in the wind. It was vast, ancient, and silent. They walked out onto a small wooden dock that stretched over the water. Jack opened the bag of salt again. He took the same amount, 1 heaping tablespoon, exactly the same dose that had ruined the glass of water, and threw it into the lake. The salt hit the surface with a tiny splash and disappeared instantly into the depths. Jack knelt down, dipped his cupped hands into the water, and brought them up. "Drink," he said. Lucas hesitated, remembering the taste in the kitchen, but he trusted his grandfather. He leaned down and drank from Jack's hands. The water was cool, crisp, and refreshing. "How does it taste?" Jack asked. "Fresh," Lucas said. "Good. Do you taste the salt?" "No." Lucas shook his head. "Not at all." Jack stood up and leaned against the railing of the dock, looking out over the water. "Lucas, the salt is the same. I put the exact same amount of salt in the glass as I did in the lake." Lucas nodded, waiting for the point. "The salt represents the problems in your life," Jack continued, his voice low and gravelly. "The difficulties, the rude people, the lost files, the traffic, the heartbreaks. These things are constant. Life will always have salt. You cannot stop the salt from coming." Jack turned to look Lucas in the eye. "But the bitterness doesn't come from the salt. The bitterness comes from the container." He pointed back toward the house. "When you are like that glass of water, small, contained, focused only on yourself and your immediate ego, even a little bit of salt makes your entire existence bitter. You become undrinkable to yourself and to everyone around you." He gestured to the vast lake. "But when you expand your mind, when you open your heart, when you stop thinking the world revolves around your specific pain, you become the lake. The salt is still there, but the lake is so vast, so deep, and so capable of holding things, that the salt doesn't change the taste of the water. The lake processes it, the lake dilutes it, the lake remains fresh." Part 5. The Transformation. Lucas stood on the dock for a long time. The wind bit at his cheeks, but he felt a strange warmth in his chest. "Are you the glass, or are you the lake?" He realized he had spent his entire adult life being a shot glass. He was rigid. He had no capacity. He let every minor inconvenience define his entire day. He thought the solution was to remove the salt, to fix the traffic, to fix the boss, to fix the girlfriend, but he couldn't fix the world. He could only change the vessel. "So," Lucas whispered, "I don't need to get rid of the problems?" "You can't," Jack said, putting a hand on his grandson's shoulder. "If you wait for a life without problems to be happy, you'll wait until you're in the grave. The goal isn't to remove the difficulty. The goal is to grow big enough that the difficulty doesn't poison you." That night, Lucas didn't sleep much, but for the first time in years. It wasn't because of anxiety. It was because his mind was expanding. He was visualizing the walls of his container breaking down. He drove back to the city on Sunday evening. As he approached the city limits, he hit the inevitable gridlock traffic. Brake lights stretched for miles. Normally, Lucas would be slamming his steering wheel, screaming at the windshield. He felt that familiar reflex, the salt hitting the water. But then, he remembered the lake. He took a deep breath. He looked at the cars around him, hundreds of other people, just like him, trying to get home to their families. Tired, hungry. He realized he wasn't the main character of a tragedy, he was just a drop in the ocean. He turned on a podcast, leaned back, and watched the city lights twinkle. The traffic was still there. The annoyance was still there. But the bitterness was gone. Part 6. The practice. Change didn't happen overnight. You don't become a lake in a day. The next week at work, the client rejected another proposal. The glass version of Lucas wanted to quit, to storm out, to drink himself into a stupor. Instead, Lucas paused. He imagined the email as a spoonful of salt. He visualized his mind widening. He asked himself, is this failure my whole identity? Or is this just a small ripple in a much larger life? He replied to the email calmly, asking for feedback to improve. His boss, surprised by the lack of defensiveness, invited him for lunch to mentor him. When Sarah called him, still upset, he didn't argue or defend himself. He listened. He absorbed her words without letting them turn the water bitter. He showed her kindness instead of reaction. They didn't get back together immediately, but the anger between them dissolved. Weeks turned into months. Lucas started volunteering at a local shelter, adding more water to his life by helping others. He started running, expanding his physical resilience. He read books that challenged him. Slowly, the people around him noticed. You seem different, his coworker said one day. Lighter. I just stopped trying to filter out the salt. Lucas smiled. Part 7. Conclusion. And that brings us back to today. Lucas is older now. He still faces challenges. He has mortgages, health scares, and days where nothing goes right. The salt never stops falling. But Lucas is no longer a glass of water. He is a reservoir. He has depth. He has flow. And because he is vast, he can take in the bitterness and turn it into something fresh. So, my friends, here is the truth I want you to take with you. Stop praying for a lighter load. Stop wishing for a life with no salt. It doesn't exist, and frankly, it wouldn't be worth living if it did. Instead, pray for a bigger heart. Work on expanding your mind. When you feel that sting of bitterness, when you feel like the world is unfair, catch yourself. Ask, am I shrinking right now? Am I becoming a small, fragile cup? Breathe, step back, look at the bigger picture. Connect with others, forgive, learn, expand. Be the river, be the lake, be the ocean. If you do that, no amount of salt can ever stop you from being fresh, clear, and full of life. Thank you for listening. If you like it, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss any story.